primary and the county pays the supplement. But if you got it from somewhere else, that throws in a whole nother variable. Because we have a person that was retired from us getting insurance and then went to work for another county, but they want to keep their spouse under ours and then keep the new insurance with his, and you can't do that. If they start, saying no.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pay this, you pay that. Is that ready?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 5:32. Calling to order the Planning and Zoning Board of members present are myself, Jerry Mata, Paul Inocos, Lucas Chavez, and Christian Mian. We do have a quorum. We first have to discuss possible discussion and possible consideration of rezoning of Eddy Street and or amendment to the zoning ordinance pertaining to Eddy Street.
Mr. Mata, will you be approving the minutes?
Sorry?
Will you be approving the minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I can let me back up.
Before I start droning on now.
Yes, let me back up. In front of you, you have your minutes of the meeting of December the 1st. Do I have any corrections? Are there any additions?
I did fix Miss Neon's name.
Yes?
Yes, I corrected Miss Neon's name. I had it typed out wrong.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, the one that we got in the mail is the correct one?
No. The one that has her name is incorrect. It doesn't have the A in Christian. So, but I fixed that. So
The city secretary says she has the corrected minutes, very similar to what we have.
Make a motion.
You gonna make a motion? A motion by Christian to accept the minutes,
A second.
and I have a second by Lucas. All in favor, aye? Okay. Okay, now, we're back to item number 3.
All right. So this is an item that this board has brought up in the past, and then the council has also brought it up as a point of discussion. And so we wanted to bring it to you and kind of present what we are thinking and see if we're heading in the right direction. If we need to go back and do any kind of changes before we bring it for formal acceptance. So the issue at hand is where Eddy Street was rezoned. It was all rezoned as commercial, top to bottom. And if you drive down Eddy Street, about half of it is residential. And so, the question was, with our current ordinance that states that if a house burns down in a commercial area, you can't rebuild your house unless you have special permission, which there is a caveat in there that given a disaster that you can rebuild. But that still gives people a lot of heartburn because it's not a guarantee. It's not spelled out in black and white that's guaranteed that you'll be able to rebuild your house just because of the zoning. So what we have done is we've kind of looked at those areas that are predominantly residential, and those are the areas that you'll see in blue on this paper that's on your desk. So everything that is shown in color is currently commercial, and you do see that those areas in red, we are recommending that they remain as commercial. Part of the reason why we don't want to completely abandon it is commercial kind of builds off of it itself. It has a certain synergy. Unless it's a very large commercial entity, people aren't going to go to it as a destination. But if you group them together, they will go to one store because it's close to the next store and they can do all their shopping all at one time. And so we want to maintain or at least aim for a certain amount of synergy in our zoning. And as this is already zoned as commercial, it doesn't impact those people any more than it already does. It's no more severe than what it already is. As you go towards the north, obviously you all are familiar with our geography. We have La Tienda and that strip mall there, which is the base, the anchor for a lot of the commercial development there. We have a lot of commercial development along 3rd Street. And between 3rd and 8th, although there are homes in there, we've also got a church, we've got some commercial that's already in there, and we have quite a few vacant lots. There's the old gas station that got torn down. There's vacant lots that don't look like they've been built on, at least not in recent history. And so there is still quite a bit of potential to develop that and redevelop it without impacting very many homeowners. As we get down past the school at Jackson, which is no longer Jackson, it is now Elizabeth. Thank you. It's now Elizabeth through there. You know, that area in there, we still got some small storefronts, we've got some school. We kicked around whether or not it actually needed to be mixed use, because we do have that as a zoning designation now. And you know, we could make the argument for that, to introduce that here and there as well. But once you get past there, you really start getting into the section of town that has residential pretty much solid all the way through, both sides of the street, right next to each other. We don't have a lot of empty lots that are in there. There are a few, but again, unless someone was going to come in and buy the empty lot and buy a couple more houses, they're not likely to come in and do a commercial structure, just because they tend to be a little bit bigger. And then you do see that we start getting back into what I'm considering our second commercial strip in there. We have a mix of various buildings, apartment complexes. The hospital has their clinic there now. Windstream has their farm there. And then on down to the gas station and those hard corners there at Eddy and Stafford. I think it's still important that we capitalize on our hard corners in town as much as possible. Those are prime real estate development because they're easy in, easy out to multiple routes. And then again, as you go further south, again, we're back into a neighborhood where it's almost houses on every single lot. There's not a lot to be gained by removing those in the sake of commercial. And then at the very bottom, you do see that strip of red where we've already got the development. That's where we've got our Domino's, our Dickies, our hotels that are already there. Part of the reason that we feel comfortable pushing the blue on the west side of Country Club is in working with TxDOT for their I-20 corridor plan. They actually want to turn all the frontage roads into one-way traffic. And as that, they're trying to limit the amount of access points onto the roadway. And so they're proposing to actually turn that into a big cul-de-sac. And so that it's not going to be amenable to commercial development at that point by the time they shut off access. It's already residential. It's not likely to develop as commercial because of that proposed development. And so since it's residential, just leave it as residential and stop trying to make it something that it's not. So in a whirlwind, that is what our thought process was. Obviously, we can gerrymander these lines. This is nothing set in stone. We can introduce mixed use if it makes sense in some of these neighborhoods to create pockets of that. And mixed use, I'm sorry, this thing just, I'm gasping for air here. Mixed use is where you try to mix your compatible uses of commercial, retail with housing. It doesn't have to be that. It could be all of one, it could be all of the other. But the idea is that you make it more walkable. The term that's usually used is work, play, live, so that everything you want is right in your neighborhood. You can just walk to it. You're not having to jump in your car to go get whatever. My only objection to introducing that here is that we don't currently have any mixed use within the core of the original Pecos, what I would call basically everything north of I-20. And so it would be introducing a new use. There's not, again, that synergy. There's not enough land mass to really make that possible unless you were to raise all the buildings and start over. It's not to say that some developer in the future wouldn't do that, but right now the land values just aren't there to make it make sense. And so mixed use is a possibility. But unless someone came to us with a plan to actually implement a mixed-use development, I don't see the point in introducing that right now. I've done a lot of talking real quick. Questions, thoughts?
I've got, okay, the only question I have is off of Fairview Cemetery on Park Street, where the school is. Everything to the, I guess, east of that is all residential, right in front of the school. And you're wanting to keep it all commercial.
To the east is where you've got your Allstate. It's where the old recycling center used to be. It's where you've got a couple different.
No.
You're
Further
talking about my
further
house.
south of Washington. You've got that corner where that light is. You've got the nail salon.
Yeah.
Then you've got a church behind it. Okay, that's where I'm at on Park Street. So you've got one itty bitty commercial, which would be the church, or you can have a church and residential.
On
But-
Park, I'm sorry,
Correct.
to the west.
So on Park going south, you should have that as a residential, because everything there is housing except for the school PD and that corner church.
Yeah, and we did, actually, that was one of the areas from Eddy to Park was one of the areas that we looked at as mixed use. And on the east half, I think it makes sense to leave it as commercial, because that's where we've got the.
You have school administration building.
Right.
You got school administration, you've got the boutique, you've got the nail salon, the old computer store that's no
So
longer.
you're gonna start.
No.
I know, but,
On the
so
others.
leaving that, but on the back side.
Park Street.
Yeah, so we had actually talked about that a little bit, and it was a coin flip on how we represented it, because the school has its offices that go all the way over there, from the tech center on back, but that's only one block, and then there's some other school offices on that. What are those other modular buildings that are to
That's the PD station now.
Well, PD,
Okay.
but there's another modular,
Right,
they added,
right.
so that's another.
Yeah, because there's about a 1 block by 2 blocks there that really didn't fit residential, but didn't fit commercial either.
One block didn't, but then you still got, like across from the football field and the baseball field, you still got a whole nother block there.
Yeah, so that's one that's easy.
Are we gonna create more little holes like we had before, or do we try to fix?
Well, no, I'm saying make it residential,
Mhm.
and when the commercial wants to go in there and do it, then they can go, well, I'm what's it called?
Adjacent.
Yeah, what else is something else? But anyway,
Contiguous.
since the other side, it's, what's it called?
Adjacent.
It's another word, but that's what I'm saying is
Contiguous.
contiguous.
There you go.
So see, like we did a spot zone change right here, way down south, but anyway, going back up there.
You haven't done any spot zoning.
Well, we haven't, well, see how we broke up and put residential between Johnson and Cactus in that little
Okay,
spot?
so,
So now it's no longer contiguous.
but it's contiguous to existing residential.
Yeah.
Right now. So everything on the outside of that is already residential, and so it's not a spot zone. And a spot zone would
Others you
be
chose.
if you were to take 1, 2, even 3 houses on a block and change that zone. Spot zoning only applies to very small areas, as long as you have got and this is a very loose definition, because as long as you've got significant amount of one type of zoning, then it's not spot zoning.
Okay,
So if you turn an entire block into residential where it was previously commercial, as long as it's the entire block, it's not spot zoning.
okay, even though they're pocket, everywhere around it is still not spot zoning.
Well,
Spot zoning is when you specifically take one little spot and say, hey, we're gonna change this for a reason.
right, so if I were to go
I got you.
right here, just somewhere there, and
Right.
just suddenly change one of those lots into commercial,
So,
that's spot zoning.
so the house where you live right now, if it burnt down, you'd have to have permission to rebuild it,
Yeah,
the way they wanna do it right now.
correct. And that was my reason of bringing this up, because I knew we had a little contingency there.
Yeah.
Everybody kept saying no.
So there is a contingency, and basically it's a hardship, which is basically if your house burns down, if it gets struck by lightning, a semi truck runs into it, someone beyond your control, there is a contingency that says that the city will or can allow it to be rebuilt. But a lot of people's concern, and we've heard it from several people over the years, is, well, it says it can be, not that it will be, not that it's a will be allowed.
I guess my thing is, I would like to see our residential people
Yeah, if you got copies of it.
be comfortable to know that they can rebuild their house when they want to, not ask for permission. But if it wants to be converted to commercial, then they come up here to say that.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's,
So there, that, I'd like to see that change.
okay, and that's easy enough. And as long as we keep it in a group, it's fine.
Right.
Plus, it's already contiguous to,
Right, because
existing.
a church can be in a residential neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's not an exception.
No.
The only exception is that one block of the school admin building, that's it.
Yeah, and actually.
Otherwise, it could be all,
You can have
Residential.
school administration buildings and residential.
Oh, yeah, you can.
so it
You
could
want
be
to
all
say that?
residential there.
Okay.
Yeah, you can actually have schools and their offices in residential zones.
So the way you have it between Normandy and, can't tell what that road is. See how you got that one strip of blue in there? It would just need to come back up on that Park Road.
Yep.
South of the cemetery, north of the
Yeah,
baseball.
basically along the alley
Right,
there.
just right there.
Yeah.
And that would cover those houses there.
Yeah, and that's fine because both the cemetery and the school and everything around it is all residential. So that's not a big deal at all.
And then coming off of Stafford, that's where that empty lot is, that's where, the PTO building is, and then those empty lots, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got Country Club on one side there.
Yeah, so, yeah, you've got the old fire station, you've got the new gas station, you've got the, physical therapist office with an empty lot next to it, next to an empty lot, next to an empty lot. Pretty much that whole corner is all. And they've come, it's been a couple years now, where they
were
wanted
thinking
to
about
build
building a
that.
hotel there, right?
They wanted to, and it got shut down, but, they're still interested in doing that.
So, up here on Cedar Street, on the 800 block of Cedar Street, that didn't become a spot zoning?
No, because we took blocks of it. If we would've just said that house right there, we're gonna just change that one house in the middle of the block, and it's gonna be commercial on each side of it, that would've been a spot. But since you took a bigger part of it that's got like streets or divisions, and you took the whole thing, that's not spot zone.
Yeah, and there's no mathematical formula to that, other than it has to be justified that it has enough mass or similar use.
You know, that's probably have the south end of town, just south of Daggett, all that little area there. That was a headache, it was a mess.
Yeah,
And we tried to clean all of it, and that took a while.
yeah,
There was a lot of protests.
and it did get cleaned up, and it's much better than it was.
Oh, yeah.
But again, it was one of those things that we kind of just painted it with a brush and made it look pretty without necessarily looking at the context.
I didn't want to turn this into that again.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense.
Now, what bothers me is because you can see where the residential will go into the other side of the residential across that, and then I think the confusion happens with the coloration of the map, with it being blue, commercial, we see it as blue on here, and residential being red, and then you made the commercial red on this map and you flipped it, and then
Big colorblind.
so basically it was like it's hard to kind of differentiate where that C1 starts and ends and continues whenever you're breaking it up this way to where it looks kind of broken up, where that this is going to become residential, but it's also being brought in with the rest of the residential, and this C and this C1 continues basically.
Colors are just backwards.
It's almost like you make maps for a living.
Maybe I
Maybe.
might make a career out of it soon,
Maybe.
someday.
So
But
this,
besides them being flipped backwards,
so this regulation 5.1, this is in effect.
it is. And so this is where,
This is the
No, this is the rewrite.
this is the rewrite, yeah.
This is not in effect right now. This is, we're looking at rezoning and adding some language, if we miss a house, that it can be rebuilt. Say it's a house in a commercial zone, this
Okay.
kind of spells out some
Conversely,
language.
If it was a commercial, you can still go to commercial if it's not residential?
That would be correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so, thank you for reminding me, I kind of forgot about that. And so Donnie's been working on this to add some language so that we can specifically address the residential for anyone who might be left behind.
We just don't want to have a hardship, you know.
Right.
Create hardship.
Right. And so basically this says that if you have a hardship and you're using it for residential, you can rebuild it right away by
Or
right.
you use it for commercial, you can go back, build commercial and a residential.
No, just the other way around. So if it's in commercial, so for example, even though my colors are reversed, this area between 3rd and 8th that we're proposing to leave as commercial, there are a few homes still in there, even though there's a lot of empty lots and some other stuff in there. If one of those were to burn down, even though it's in commercial, they could rebuild it as residential, but it has to be based off of what we're proposing. It has to be homesteaded.
It has to be homesteaded.
Yeah, in order to apply for that.
Okay.
If their commercial building burns down and they want to come back and build a house, no dice.
No,
They got to
but-
come back as
But I'm a commercial, and you changed it to residential. Can I rebuild my store again?
Okay, so you're asking about those areas that we're
Changing.
asking to. So those would be areas that would be subject to coming to P&Z and asking for a rezone. And that's where the possibility of spot zoning would probably come up, because then they'd probably be talking 1 or 2 lots at a time. Is it adjacent? Does it fit the use?
But as long as there's a remedy for it. I just don't want to be hard on people. Because they're our constituents.
We can still clean up the language a little bit, but this, in effect, does eliminate that hardship. Now, they still have to follow all the rules that they would if they were building in a brand new spot. They have to submit plans, they have to be approved, it has to meet all the codes.
All the requirements, yes.
So they can't build exactly like they were before, because that probably wasn't built under the current code. So they would have to, the new structure would have to be built to current code.
And it has to be a total loss?
No.
No, I mean, you could, if half of it burned out, you could rebuild that half. And that half that you rebuild had to be the code, but if nothing was hurt on the part that wasn't burned, you wouldn't have to bring that up to speed. I probably would, but I don't think we'd require it.
Yeah. If you're at that point, you're probably redoing all the electrical and everything anyways, so.
Hey, question, so going back up to houses and residential and being more than the other, you've got houses on 5th and 6th and 4th down Eddy Street.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any there that are blocks that are completely full with houses that we should consider them? Because why are we considering the other residences down there but not up there?
On 4th and 5th, 6th,
I think some of this goes back to some of the original intent of why we went a full block either side. For most commercial, you're going to need to go a little bit deeper. And so the thinking here is, rather than going commercial, residential, and just constantly flip-flopping them, we're trying to keep that to as much of a minimum as we can. And because that stretch does have quite a bit of empty lots and already commercial and the church in there and other things.
Which is okay on a residential.
Which is, it's fine in any zone. We really,
Right,
you
so
get in trouble when you
that
start
block
doing-
is
yeah.
gray, it doesn't affect either or.
But the thinking is the same, is that it's going to be easier for someone to acquire more lots because they're not going to have the cost of destruction if they wanted to build something bigger. And so to try to keep it as contiguous as we can, and to try to have that continuity between 3rd Street and between our shopping center, it's a little bit cleaner to just have it be the same. And
So are we saying by leaving it like this, are we saying if a person loses their house or doesn't want to do, we're not.
That's where this comes in.
Okay, that'll protect them.
That's where this comes in. Yep. And basically, as long as they're homesteaded, they're gonna be
So if
allowed
you have a
to,
rental property there,
then it's a commercial use.
you're out.
And you can rebuild it as a commercial use, but you're gonna rename it a apartment rather than a single family home.
Well, because it's not gonna be homesteaded,
Right.
so you could just turn it into a commercial rental property.
Right. Which it is in effect anyways.
I'm good with that. Good with that.
So from Lincoln to Stafford, that whole red area, how does that make it contiguous for the commercial?
Well, it's contiguous for that section. So basically, we feel like that's a big enough chunk, or if we keep that much area, that's a big enough chunk to consider it as a commercial zone.
We're not leaving little holes here.
Yeah, so if we were to just go all the way down, let's say all the way to the intersection and just leave the gas station, one, we would miss the realtor office, we'd miss the storage, we'd miss the dollar store,
Fire hall.
yeah, fire hall. And so we would actually be missing some of those uses that are being used for commercial, but we also start getting into, if we just looked at what was strictly commercial right now, that's where you start getting into some of that spot zoning. And that's why it's kind of a fuzzy math kind of problem, because there's nothing that says you have to have so many acres for it to not to be spot zoning. It just has to have enough where it can feed off of each other.
My thinking is that C2 that kind of is adjacent to the C1 that you're talking. I mean, is there possibility that, what's the difference between C1 and C2 and switching that over, that C2 to C1 to make it kind of flow up, maybe Stafford to change that commercial C2 to C1?
There's nothing to say that we can't do that. It's just C1 is more restrictive? Or
C2.
C2 is more restrictive?
No.
No,
C1 is
C1
more
is-
restricted.
Two was more restricted.
That's basically your retail area, C1. C2 is more industrial
Manufacturing.
stuff, not necessarily manufacturing, but like, Gibson should be in like a C2 area.
Yeah, because I mean, there's the lot by the TNMP that
Right.
I was like, you could maybe, just TNMP and all of that. I don't know if it could be C1 or something like that. I don't know.
TNP would be actually a C2.
Yeah,
type
yeah.
thing, so.
But, so are you talking about the area just south and west of
Yeah.
this? That's currently C2?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I wasn't gonna tackle that one.
I mean, it's right. I was like right there where it ends, where you kind of highlighted it with that red,
Uh-huh.
with the C1, and then just go basically west on Stafford up towards like basically the hospital district, to maybe, I mean, do
You've got a
something like
trailer
So you're
park
saying
in
make
there.
it all C1 or all C2?
make it possibly C1 to make it look a little bit cleaner of that Stafford Road. If you
Yeah.
wanted to do that little lot, or
Well,
maybe,
most of that stuff on Stafford is gonna fall into your C2, so you don't really wanna move that back to a C1.
And you get real close to the I industrial too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've only got that one strip of yellow in there in the R2, because there's a bunch of trailer houses right in there.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's a good example of not being spot zoning, just because it has enough
Multiple.
in there.
So,
So,
What do we need to do to make a recommendation to the council?
we just need to go back. This is more like a workshop discussion so that we know. We'll go back and we'll change this strip. And, if anyone has any other ideas or questions, comments.
Well, I think this first came up discussing, not Eddy Street, but 285. So are we still gonna discuss that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Eddy Street was the one
Well,
that we've had.
We had
brought up.
changed some on 285 and what's the next street over? Ash. And
Oh,
so
just
we
recently.
did some blocks, okay, but
Yeah.
then we left a couple of blocks undone.
So that went to the council already.
Right, but we
We
still
were
have some.
discussing it only.
Well, but we still had some, remember we wanted to bring it back because there was a lot of other residential there that needed to be cleaned up.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
that was
went
what
up
we
to
wanted
8,
this meeting
I
for.
believe, was
Yeah,
that?
it was 7, 8 was skipped for some reason, it was just up to
It's-
7.
We skipped some blocks in there on the
Yeah.
backside.
We skipped 8 because it was part of that big commercial.
Yeah, so if you look at it.
We skipped where
Roddy Harris.
Roddy Harrison owned his,
Mhm.
but then we skipped another block or two, but then we made it, commercial or residential. And what I'm saying is all those other residential properties on that backside should be the same way we're doing it here on.
Well, we had the same thinking there as we've got here on the north side, where there's quite a few empty lots and there's quite a few businesses that do go all the way through already. And so there are residences there, and so they're sharing it with, for instance, are they the ones that make the fittings, the hose fittings?
That's TPI.
Okay, so they go all the way through. We've got a church that's on one
Right,
of them.
well, no,
They've got
TPI, see the lot that's right behind TPI? There's already a trailer sitting there waiting to be put in as a residential, if it was ever to be marked residential.
Yeah, but,
And then
okay.
everything on that other whole
Isn't
block
that
of
the one that
it
started
is
this whole-
residential.
Yeah.
That's the one that started this whole conversation, was that trailer.
Well, see, but that whole other block, if you say like in numbers, we would say that's not spot zoning. That's all residential there. And then it hits another total residential block. But when this individual came to say, hey, would you change mine back to be residential? We did, but then we left out these other little blocks that we could have said 80–90% of them are residential, that are continuous residential. We should mark them residential.
Ms. Sarah, do you have that ordinance?
What, the zone change?
Yeah.
Wait, we didn't pass it by ordinance, we just passed it by motion. You're talking about the last zone change we just did?
Yeah, that was on Ash for those 8 blocks or whatever.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a map of that, please? Because we did look at that and we applied the same kind of logic where if the majority of it is residential, then we tried to make that residential. There were a few blocks that we did skip and we left as commercial, but it was mostly because they either had empty lots or they had commercial that was already going all the way too deep, or it had the potential where that entire block could be rebuilt. So that was part of the reason why we left
The
Roddy's.
only thing too deep is Roddy's property.
Well, and that's, that one's the easiest one because that has the biggest,
But also, there's all residential all behind it.
yeah,
And
that
then
one
you
should
skip
have.
Roddy's, and then you go to the next one, and it's all residential behind it.
we
Those
fixed
ones were switched over to.
We fixed that.
Okay, but there's still some we didn't.
Yeah, there's, I think, 3, maybe 4 blocks that got left.
Yeah, I think it's.
But I don't know of any empty lots on the 285 side that would say, hey, we want to go buy that property too.
No, not necessarily on the 285 side. On the 285 side, they've already got commercial.
Right, that's not gonna change.
Yeah,
But on
right.
the back side of that, which butts up to Ash, that little bit, let's say between the alley and Ash, I think some of that could still be put as an R2.
It could be. We'll have to take another look at it,
But that's what I thought this workshop was gonna be, not Eddie.
no, I'm sorry. The one that council brought up recently that kicked this off for
Those
me
are both.
was Eddie.
Both of them wanted to.
But we had requested a workshop, remember?
Well, that didn't make it back. I'm sorry.
Or maybe it got,
Council brought up Eddie. That's why I'm bringing Eddie to you.
I was kind of upset when they tell me you can't build. What the hell,
Yeah, and
And
we
had a
realized
hardship. We
that,
discussed this.
is this a workshop?
well, it's a discussion, so yeah.
Okay. How did Scott Johnson give that guy the right to build on y'all's property?
We're fighting that
Okay,
Yeah, that's not done yet.
okay.
because he can't.
That did happen. Huh?
Oh yeah, they built on it. We've been fighting it, but yeah.
And what happened to the one up there on,
I just questioned it because it came back here like we could do something about it. And there's nothing we don't, They don't say who can and can't build on somebody's property.
Well, you can't use public right of way for private benefit without the public receiving some benefit as well. And to date, we have received no benefit from such.
Then we have the trucking company up on Lincoln, that's still in court?
That is in court.
Yeah.
We've been working on that one all week, trying to get some more documentation.
And then we still have the parking
that
lot
Pepe?
at the, Dos Tamaulipas.
It's the other one.
Yeah, I'm about to completely shut down Avelina's because they've had over a year to fix that parking lot and they haven't done it.
Yeah.
They made a mess this last,
Yeah, with the snow and everything. Yeah.
We still can't get too far off topic. We will gladly take a list of everything.
That's
that you
Eddie
want.
Street, we can talk about it, it's Eddie Street.
That one's Eddie Street, yeah. Oh, thank you. All right, so are these the ones that we did change, Ms. Ira?
The ones that are
Darkened are the ones
outlines,
we changed.
those did get changed.
Those are the ones we did change. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I only see one that we didn't, and that from 5th to 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is Harrison's property, if I'm not mistaken.
See, and I thought that we had skipped some from like 11th to 13th, and then we went.
Yeah,
back
we
to
didn't do
11th.
anything with the 11th to
No,
13th.
we stopped at 11.
We stopped at 11. Okay.
See, those are the ones I wanted to go back and look and see.
From 11th south.
Right,
Okay. We'll take another look.
yeah, cause like where TPI is,
Mm-hmm.
they're not, I mean, as far as I know, they're not interested in going backwards, cause they've got it all along 285, and then they got the big lot over there on the other side. But then I noticed somebody had cleaned up that lot and set a trailer there.
Well, and
And then
TPI
it
is
just
sitting
sat there.
at 10th. Are they on 10th?
And if it's in an R2, they could put a residence in there.
They're sitting on both sides of 10th, aren't they?
They're sitting on,
10th and
no,
Oh, yeah.
it's 11th, it's on both sides of 11th.
Both sides of 11. Okay, so yeah, this is the one that Spark called that because this is the one that has the modular home that was sitting there.
Right.
And they had come in and asked if they could get an SUP, which we could have granted, you know, because it is residential, and we just decided that it was easier just to clean this up and make that residential. We just skipped Roddy's because, you know, that whole block could easily be developed as commercial and nobody would lose any sleep.
Let's see, we got Roddy.
Wasn't there a house sitting right there on that, Harrison?
yes, the one house belongs to Anita,
Valleza, yeah?
Perea.
Oh, but yeah,
That was her.
So is that residential no more right there, that section?
No.
The whole thing's been cleared off.
She only owns 150-foot lot there.
Okay.
And there's nothing on that lot now, right?
That's on the ash side, so there's nothing there. Yeah, but she still owns it.
Yeah.
Roddy owns 99.9% of that whole block.
So you got Roddy, and then you've got the oil change, right?
Old change, yeah.
And then Salgados,
Right, Alfredo's.
and then on the other side of Salgados, you've got Alfredo's. No,
Yes.
No, on the other side you've got the nursery. And then you've got the old,
Roddy, you got Roddy, and then you've got,
the old,
you got Alfredo's in there
building.
somewhere, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right across from Salgado.
10th and 285.
That's Alfredo's,
That's Alfredo.
so you got Alfredo's and TPI on that other end?
Correct. The little warehouse,
Okay,
the corner there.
And then it's
then it's on, yeah, Western Nursery.
so then the property behind TPI is an R2 now.
Now, yeah.
So he can put the modular home
The modular home there is taken care of.
Yep.
Okay, and then from Alfredo's, or from TPI, you've got TPI again that runs all the way to,
there. To the corner, that's it.
yeah, and then that's where the
Oh, you got the flower shop there, the garden.
yeah, the garden, and then, but by his owns that corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's behind that?
Yeah.
The trailer.
That's Titus, yes.
Titus has all that, and
then-
that's
And then it's the church.
considered
And then it's
commercial.
the church, yeah.
It's the church and, okay, the church,
Church
And
garden.
then the
Church
it's
can be in
lots,
either
and
one.
then it's all the houses, the manufactured home and houses all the way to the end.
And that's what you're wanting to say, leave as commercial.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And then is there anything else further down there that's just 100% houses?
No,
On the
further
block.
down is a rodeo ground.
After that.
Yeah, after
rodeo
that's the
grounds.
rodeo ground.
You've
The
got
sheriff's
Tony,
So you've got the coach lives there,
And then
and all of that's houses, right? That one block.
I think it's
yeah,
two, three
it's
houses
two,
and a
three
trailer.
houses,
Okay.
Maybe it's their problem. Any more discussion on
I
this?
just thought there were more blocks that way. Over in this one.
Can we move on to number 4? Discuss the proposed bike route. The First Street to 6th along Oak Street, and Oak Street to Ross Boulevard along 4th.
So I wanted to show everyone on the board. We just got the update to our comprehensive plan that was just adopted 2 months ago. One of the things that it calls for is that we need more variety of transportation. It needs to actually have walking, pedestrians, bicycles. Eventually we might need buses on fixed routes, that type of thing. Because if you look at Pecos, it is not really pedestrian friendly from a infrastructure standpoint. I think it's pedestrian friendly from the standpoint that everyone's used to seeing people walking in the street, and so you know not to hit them, which hopefully you would know not to hit them anyways, but it's kind of, we're used to it, but it's not necessarily the safest thing for them to be doing. And so one of the things that gets recommended is the creation of an actual bike routes, where there's designated lanes, reduction in parking, or striping and signage, so that people know that it's not just for cars, it's also for these other types, these other modalities. And so what we've got here in the blue are the proposed routes that we have come up with. And the reason that we came up with these as routes, I know it's kind of hard to see, but everywhere that we've got an orange X, that's one of the destinations in town. Either it's a school, it's a park, it's the downtown, it's shopping. There's something there that's a destination that we want to be able to tie all these things to. And so I don't know why you would want to, but if you were ever to want to ride your bike to the airport to catch a flight, you could do that. It also so happens that you're going to be going by the golf course and Maxie Park and everything there. But this does not preclude bicycles from being on any of our streets. This hopefully just creates a safer route to go A to B for major destinations. We've tried to tie it in to parks, to cemeteries, to the downtown. We've tried to tie it into existing infrastructure for a stoplight. I've been asked why it does this little jog over to 3rd, and the reason it does that is because there's a stoplight on 3rd, and so that makes it easier to get across. I personally wouldn't want to cross Cedar or Eddy on my own, so I would want to hit a button to be able to get across. Same up here on D Street there's the old school lights that are flashing that we're hoping to convert into an active pedestrian crossing there. They were nice enough to stripe crosswalks there, and it's the easiest one to convert. Tie it back into the county's park down here, get across the tracks. So in general, that's what we're trying to accomplish. We've got the hospital, we've got the police department, various other parks, future parks, and so we can try to create some induced demand. And it's kind of like Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. That if we had bike lanes, then people would use them, but they can't use them because they're not there kind of thing. So this is what we are proposing to do. And part of the reason that we wanted to bring it to the P&Z is to see, one, are we missing anything that we need to be tying into? Two, is there a better way to get between them that we're not seeing? And the third thing is these two areas in particular, to make you aware that in order to use those as routes, that we're gonna have to do some changes, ordinance-wise as far as parking. And that's always is going to impact, residents, it's gonna impact businesses. The first one on Oak Street between First and Sixth, we're not proposing to take away parking. We just actually want to stripe it so that you can actually see where you're supposed to park. Any of you have been in the downtown, you know some people have 20 feet on either side of them, some of them have 6 inches. It's kind of crazy. One of the things that we would like to introduce in that downtown corridor is actually reverse in parking, where you would pull ahead and then back into your spot. This accomplishes 2 things for us. One is when you're in the driver's seat about ready to pull out, you are right next to the bike lane, and so you can actually make eye contact with whoever's coming down. The second benefit is that it makes everyone get out of the car to the back and move to the sidewalk, and so that anyone that's going with their family, if they've got young kids, rather than the kids having to go out into traffic in order to get around the car to get in, they're exiting the car and going straight to the sidewalk. And so it's a safety.
Parallel parking, did you talk about?
Reverse in, so it'll still be
Instead of
angled.
pulling in, you're gonna back in.
And actually, let me grab a sign real quick because I think we've got one.
Is it like instead of them being faced this way,
Instead
that
of
face
pulling
this
in
way?
like this, you're gonna.
No, I don't know what reverse
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
I'm just talking
Pull
about
up
the
and back
line.
in.
The lines will be reversed,
Reverse,
basically.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
You'd be driving up Oak Street and then you just back into basically
Yeah.
the Italian place.
Okay.
So it'll still be angled parking. It'll just be
Reverse.
reversed from what
There's nobody's gonna be hitting the trees and the signs and the poles and the.
Hopefully hit those holes in the state theater.
So there is that possibility.
Or people on the sidewalk, because they don't see them walking on the sidewalk.
If you look at our downtown, if anyone backs into that curb, they're going to regret
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Because we have you got the curb, you got this 3-foot section that's really steep, and then you get into the actual sidewalk. And so, yeah, if they're in that section, there is that possibility. But you should be watching where you're going whenever you're driving, no matter what. And so it is a possibility, but
I just think a pickup's backing up in there and they're gonna be elevated and they're gonna get in on the sidewalks and they're gonna have a big old hitch on it and some little kid's gonna run and boom! Or some adult's gonna walk by with their pizza and boom! Hit their shin on the. I think they create a big old mess.
well,
That's my opinion.
I don't completely disagree with you. So that's a good segue into how we're going to approach this as infrastructure. Because in order to initiate it, we've got to just kind of get something out there and get people used to using it. And so we're probably going to go out and use our existing pavement and just stripe it.
But we own 2 parking lots, right on Oak Street.
Oh, yeah.
We own one here in the corner.
Yep.
We own the opposite by the courthouse.
And we've got plans for that too.
I've never seen Oak Street though maxed out at parking.
No.
We're just spoiled. Not living in a big city and always living in a small city. I want to park right next to the door. I got lucky today and I got my spot today.
That's right. And so the first phase is just getting it out there, getting some demand going. The second phase is our downtown needs some work. The road needs some work, the sidewalks need some work, and that's where we're going to have to actually take into the consideration those geometric considerations for parking. Because I don't know about you, but it drives me crazy that we have this huge bubble on our road.
It's for the trainers.
But it's not, because if you look at it, and I've looked at it, I look at it every time I go by, and if we were to have that big of a flood, all those buildings would be flooded out before the road would. And that's not that's not the intent. That's not how you design it. I look at it all the time.
It's like the street in front of my business.
Well, 1920,
With the little
that was the only
curve.
road.
Yeah, that you drive up and then
Yeah.
into the park.
Yeah. Yes. So that's phase 2. After we've actually gotten people used to it.
Let me ask you
need
a
to address
question.
the downtown.
Being that it's a business and everything right there, why would we have a bike route there?
So that you can get people there.
Well, but why not have it a designated parking on the end with bicycles and walk? And not put your bikes and pedestrians in an area that we want commerce in.
because all the people that are much smarter than I that do bike lanes on a regular basis say that you want connectivity. You don't want it to be an endpoint.
I can see a bike lane there, like big cities, yeah, they want them in front of them, but you can't park there. They don't have parking there.
They do.
Or they have parallel parking.
So,
But we have drive-in parking, or now you want to do backup parking.
right.
It doesn't matter. I mean, if you put a bike lane in the middle of that, it's gonna be dangerous. Because the biking person's gonna think they have the right of way because it's a designated parking deal. But that 3,000-pound vehicle doesn't understand.
Not gonna
You
use
back
right
up,
away.
and, I mean,
Okay.
to me, like
So,
you could.
so are you
could-
envisioning the bike lane being between the sidewalk and the parking?
I'm envisioning, yeah, in the street, right?
Okay, so it would go sidewalk, parking, then bike lane,
Sidewalk,
and then driving lane,
parking, and then bike lane.
and then driving lane.
Oh yeah, that's dangerous.
Oh no.
Why not make the parking? I mean, why don't we buy some bicycle racks and stick them on the ends and say, hey, drive your bike over here, park your bike, and walk in the shopping.
Well, we're
areas.
gonna have bike racks as well, but we're not necessarily looking at it as an endpoint destination. It's a route.
So you're saying the sidewalk, then parking,
Parking,
Bike
and then the
lane.
bike lane, and then the driving.
yes.
That street is wider.
It's been implemented, it's worked.
Yeah.
And for anyone that needs to go back to driver's ed,
Yeah.
the pedestrians do have the right of way. Whether or not people, when they're driving, think that. And,
Well,
and so you
Kevin-
bring up a very valid point in saying that, is that this is going to require a lot of public education. And we're already starting to implement some of that to figure out how we're going to message that.
I just think we're special out here too because we've got double cab, long beds,
Oh, yeah.
hookups, and welders, and then you've got somebody with a smart car, and then it's not like that lane. Are the cars not gonna, a big truck's not gonna block the,
Nope.
we're gonna have them so far out that they're not gonna touch it,
Nope.
okay?
So these are going to be, they're already designed so that you have 20 feet of length, which even our dualies, they're going to be about that. I think Ford F-150 with extended bed and cab is 18 feet. And so you,
So from the curb to the bike lane, you're gonna have 20 feet
yep,
to park your car.
yep, on the
And
angle.
then you'll have the bike lane.
Yep. Yeah, and so our saving grace there is that we've got a really wide road section. And that is our saving grace because we can still allow parking and still accommodate these other things.
But some you will have to eliminate parking. Some streets.
Yes, which is actually Oak Street to Ross
Ross.
along 4th. So, and actually this is most of 4th Street. We're going to expand our conversation here. There are sections of 4th Street from Ross. Oh no, that's right. If I would read Oak Street to Ross are the areas that we're going to have to look at eliminating parking. The reason for that is you start at Ross and it's about 28 feet, and every 3 or 4 blocks it gets a little bit wider till you're all the way to the downtown, and then it's full width. And so as we get closer to the downtown, we'll start being able to accommodate more parking. But for those first few blocks from Ross on, as you're heading east, we're going to have to eliminate on-street parking in order to accommodate the bike lanes. Now, the upside of this is that there's only 3, maybe 4 houses that actually face 4th Street, and they've all got driveways. And so, yeah, it's going to be inconvenient if you're not allowed to park in the street, but we're also talking about a very small population that it would affect.
4th Street is where the post office is, right?
Yes,
Which is super narrow already.
yes. And so, hoping to improve it by actually striking it and actually making it visible where you can be. We're already looking at that, and we're probably going to have to shorten the width of the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street in order to accommodate all of it. We're not done with all the actual design of this.
That's dangerous there.
It is. It
The other
is.
day I did exactly what I was supposed to do, and a lady honked at me and flipped me off when she drove by.
And it's a high turnover place. Out of everything in the downtown, the post office probably sees most of the quick trips you know, people getting in and out.
And then people drive fast through there.
And then the parking in that alleyway too, they'll park right in the alleyway.
They've always done that, and it's been posted for years.
Yep. And so
You don't
there's,
enforce nothing, there ain't no rules.
there's a lot of work to be done. There's no denying that.
That
Oh,
may be better to do a one-way right there. I don't know how else you're gonna get your bicycle lane in there. Because
and
you need the parking, cause it gets full.
yeah, and it's high
At times.
turnover. Yep.
But maybe a one-way,
Well, we're not done with the design of it yet, but the concept, we already know, just based off of what is out there, that we're gonna have to change parking.
It's just like anything else, you have to try it first, see how it works.
Well,
There's no
we gotta design it, you know, we know that it's too narrow to fit everybody in there as it is right now. And that's another place where everyone just kind of parks and does whatever they want. And so, you know, some striping is gonna make a difference right off the bat for that.
That or mitigate maybe like the left-hand side, the one that's going west end, maybe make it parallel parking rather than everybody just being able to park
Yeah.
at an angle, and then you be able to mitigate at least some of that traffic and be able to actually be able to see who's coming on your left-hand
yeah, the
side.
north of Fourth just needs no parking.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
like you said.
Yeah.
Those,
And then where
those
that
might be,
entrance is.
like,
And
that'd be
I
better
think
for
in
that.
order to do parallel parking, it still has to shorten that sidewalk, which that sidewalk, 15 feet easily. And so, you know, we'll have to take it back and we'll still leave storefront for those
Just
businesses
through the
there.
post office. Eight feet.
So, but we wanted to bring this up, that this is what we're looking at. There is gonna be some impact to, parking. I think we are able to avoid most impact, to residential areas except for 2 streets. Let's see. 7th Street is gonna have some impact.
Of vehicles parking in the streetway.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, I don't see very many vehicles parked in the street on
Oh,
Sunday.
there's the Napa truck, there's a,
Yeah.
You know them.
Yeah. there's
So,
Is there really?
yeah. Cause then you have the cruise apartments over there as well.
Yeah, I don't see them parking there. though.
I think
They
7th
driveways
is
park.
probably the one that gets
But they
most
have-
impacted by
they have a
residential.
lot of times.
Yeah.
And so that'll probably be one of the last ones that we implement, just because it would have an impact and it is gonna impact people's ability to drive.
I'm gonna wanna ride a bike down 7th Street.
You also have Plum as well. Plum would be another one probably over there by St. Catherine's,
Yeah,
cause that's one of the,
It's a wide street.
that one's a wide street and they can accommodate maybe parking.
well,
like
and
bike lanes.
so, sorry, I got all kinds of stuff going on up here. Plum Street is one of those that actually needs what's called a road diet, where you actually improve flow by making it narrower. And so that's one of the areas that we're looking at. One of the things that's being considered is whether or not we should do central islands to slow down traffic, because Plum Street probably sees some of the highest off 285 traffic we've got in town, because it's a straight shot. And the only thing that slows me down, and I'll be honest, the only thing that slows me down are the dips. If you go through some of those intersections, you'll lose your tailpipe if you go too quick. And so, you know, we need to slow them down. One of the ways that you slow them down is you put up trees. You put up someone for them to see, because you actually have this visual effect where things are going past you that you slow down automatically, whether you realize it or not. And so we've actually got to get some vertical going on, both off to the edges and down the middle, to get people to naturally slow down through there.
And that's from Wathall to County Road, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking?
Yeah, that whole strip.
Why not put some more stop signs?
The stop signs don't work for traffic control.
Really?
Yeah, you don't use stop signs for speed. You use stop signs where they're needed, which is where you actually have crossing movements that are high volume.
Well, like, where Cindy lives, right there in that corner. I mean, everybody knows there's no stop signs through there.
Yep,
So they haul butt,
yep,
put a couple stop signs.
yep.
That will slow it down.
That's one of the things that stop signs don't slow them down.
Take a book.
You don't use stop signs for speed control.
And that'll be good once we have those traffic lights on Lincoln.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Lincoln's another project. I mean, we've got several road projects that need to be done to address the bigger picture of what Pecos needs to be moving towards for its transportation system. So downtown's one of those, Plum Street's one of those, Lincoln's one of those. Ross, 4th Street, all need some work.
What's that? Is that Stafford and then up one is what, Lincoln? And then, so that bottom blue one, that's Stafford, right?
That's Stafford,
And
yep.
then
Daggett, which
Oh,
turns
okay.
into in front of the school.
Veterans?
Veterans, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Veterans turns into Daggett.
Okay, and then that one on top of that is Lincoln?
This is Lincoln, yep.
Stop signs slow people down.
What do you see them?
I mean, I stop, but they'll slow down.
They might want to. Well, you know.
There are other.
Like if you look all around the high school, there's so many stop signs that people avoid those roads because they're not gonna get a ticket. It's worked there. And
No,
Crockett doesn't have any, so they just fly down,
Washington and Iowa.
Put up stop signs and tear out the pavement.
There's-
Saves a
there's-
whole lot of money.
there's no stop signs there, but
Iowa and Washington are speedways.
Yeah. I think we get quite a
Take a
bit
radar
down.
gun there, you can ride them 60, 65 all day long.
Yeah, Iowa sees a lot of drag strip action.
right behind the school, there's no stop signs.
Yeah, there is.
At the ends of the strip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are looking at implementing more physical impediments. One is putting bulb outs at intersections.
What's that?
Basically, at the end of a block, you do a little pedestrian thing and actually bring the sidewalk out
Okay.
further. It has two benefits. One, it makes it shorter for pedestrians to actually cross because you're eliminating that extra 20 feet or so. And the other is, again, it's a visible thing that as you're coming up on it, you see that there's something there, and so you start to slow down. Unless you're drunk or otherwise, out of your mind.
How are we gonna fund all this? Just general funds?
Yep.
And we need more garbage trucks. I mean, I'd rather have garbage trucks than this.
We're way off subject.
February 15th.
February 15th,
We got
y'all have
three
three garbage
coming.
trucks.
Best news I heard today.
But you need to replace them one after the other, year after year after year.
I agree.
Not all at one time.
I agree.
We've got a plan for that also.
I don't disagree, but it takes time to get this stuff rolled out. So we're actually looking. One of the things that we're working on is putting together a bond package because there are several road projects that need to be done. We will be hitting up the county to see if they can help with anything, but it will be general fund. We do have our dedicated sales tax money that is for roads. There's a few caveats to that, though. One is that you can only use it for existing roads, and there's a few other in there as well. But that's going to be our primary source of money for a lot of this, especially as leverage for paying off bonds.
If I can offer you just a little bit, don't do it like the school did. If you're gonna propose, say $6 million bond, but this is what this is gonna go for.
Oh yeah,
We're gonna do 7th Street to here to here, we're gonna actually do this, we're gonna actually do that.
we're going to have a project list,
Yeah.
and that's what we're working on putting together right now.
Schools were pretty secretive about it, but people don't buy it, and they're still not buying it.
And we could easily drop $150 million on our roads and not blink
yeah.
twice.
Oh, yeah.
But the bond issue is probably going to be on the probably about $50
Just
million.
sewage and water infrastructure, God.
Probably looking at about a $50 million range for this first one. And we are going to have a list of projects with engineering estimates for them so that we can present to the public, this is what we're going to do with this money. And that's one of the things that we failed to do with some of our previous bonds. So everyone knows, you can actually take out a bond up to $10 million without taking it to the voters. If you're a city, I don't know what it is for the county or for schools. We've done that several times, but there really wasn't much of a plan in place. Obviously, when we're talking $50 million, you're starting to get into real money.
Yeah, people got excited when they saw the parks. I've heard comments, a lot of comments.
Hopefully positive
It
comments.
hurt me. Yeah, I've seen the kids out there playing basketball and walking the dogs and stuff like that. And it's,
Yeah, I see more kids out now just sitting at the picnic table talking.
yeah.
And I'm like, man, I'm glad to see that. You know, or
Exactly.
they got their Dairy Queen and they're gonna go eat over there, or Subway and go eat over there, and I'm like, man,
And they're
finally
not
giving
tearing it
something
up.
to
They're
kids.
picking up the garbage. There's a place to dispose of the garbage.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to see that.
So that's our thoughts. If you have comments, questions,
I
other
guess
things
my
to do
comments on the
there.
bike lanes are to maybe minimize and maximize arteries, not have so many of them, because I mean, looking at that, it's like, well, shoot, that's everywhere. And like when I look at the county roads, if we try to maintain every county road out there, it's just impossible.
Mhm.
So start focusing on the arteries of where, if I live here, I got 2 blocks and I'm not gonna be on a bike path, and all of a sudden I'm on the bike path. To where you're not trying to catch every place, maybe not as many, so that everybody knows where the designated designated bike paths are. But if it's like, oh my God, I'm in another one, oh my God, I'm in another one.
But the map's kind of deceiving. It's just like,
It's smaller.
yeah, it's a lot
It's bigger in
more
real life.
spread out than it looks. Like, it looks like it's everywhere, but it's like all those roads all have proper width. All those ones, like Daggett, all of those have the proper width to be able to withstand bike lane as well, and then have connectivity, and then
Well,
like
look
there's a
where
lot
people
of
walk
streets
home.
in between it.
All around the school.
Yeah.
There's Austin High School and all around the compact. That'd be a great bike path.
Yeah, and this isn't gonna happen all at once. This is gonna get rolled over several years.
10, 20 years.
Well, probably not that long, but we are probably talking 5-6 years to.
And yeah, it's gonna hit those arteries first,
Yeah.
like the 4th
Downtown.
Street, downtown,
Yeah.
the hospital,
And some of these,
probably the park.
so like 4th Street on the east side of town, we need curb and gutter in there before we really be able to extend that. So
I was
we're,
gonna ask about like the roads, even the roads that don't have sidewalk.
yeah,
Like, cause having sidewalk would be amazing.
Yep.
But then you're gonna add a bike lane, like I'd rather have a sidewalk. I mean, I love the bike lane. I'm a bike rider and I'm always scared of getting run over, so that's perfect, but even just having a sidewalk would be
yep,
on a lot of the streets.
And that would
amazing.
keep all the mud off or keep some off, you know.
some, yeah.
Because I see the ones on Washington and Texas, and those residents just drive up to their front door and drive out and get mud all over the curb, and I don't know why. Something hasn't been done about that, I don't know.
Yep. No, and I don't disagree at all. We need to increase it for all modalities.
I think that's awesome.
We're not ADA compliant.
If you have any suggestions for us, we'd like to discuss it either. And to help you guys.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
I guess you're, just for this meeting and for technology, and we've got all these printers, and let's start using them, that way we can mark on them and see what we're talking about, because it takes me a while to get used to looking where I'm at and then that.
You have to picture it all.
Yeah, but if we utilize the technology we have, it might be easier to see it. Because like that to me is like, oh my God, that's a lot of bike routes.
Well,
and then you said
Yes,
it's
it
not.
is.
You wanna
And I'm like, okay.
We could bring a tablet. There's a whole GIS portal, and then we could be able to have that up, and then have these kind of accessible to the public, and then anybody could be able to manipulate it and be able to see it and be able to look.
Well,
at
just
it.
like these 2 monitors here or something. I mean, just so
That's
that
kind of how
can-
we had the zoning map up on the TV, so where we could be able to zone in
Yeah.
and be able to look at where we were like, like what we're looking at, where we're going to change up the zones for, I think, boulder rocks. I mean, that's the same concept of putting that on to the TV.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I was like, everybody had a tablet or anything like that, kind of like how council does. You have a tablet, you can be able to throw something like this on, and you can be able to highlight areas, and you can kind of see how that's kind of spread out more than it actually looks like, because it's
Yeah.
larger scale.
So most of our blocks are about 600 feet. So if you look at 3 blocks, you're already 4
long.
miles. This will be hanging up around City Hall if anybody has any desire to come look at it some more.
Are the doors open in City Hall?
They can be if you let us know you're coming. We've got this area closed off due to coronavirus, trying to avoid or limit how many
Yeah, I'm
people
trying to come
come
pay my
in.
water bill, it's hell trying to get into there.
Yeah, and we're about to add a second kiosk to try to speed things up out there.
Made a mistake, I put mine in the box over there, I got late charges. Don't do that again. Any more business to come before the board? To add to the minutes, Tammy Fiona joined the meeting, but she was just a bit late. Any more, business? Call for an adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Paul says, let's do it. It's at 6:42. All in favor? All right, go home.
Thank you all.
Get your ear done?
Absolutely. I expect nothing less on these meetings.
I'm asking for help.